everyone. For those of you who don't recognise me, my name is, as this just said, is Tamara, and I'm one of the panellists within the team. So this application before you has been referred to the Development Control Committee following a referral from the delegation panel, and this meeting was held on the 18th of April. The application is a household application and is for a replacement wall to the front elevation of the dwelling. The application is retrospective and therefore means the replacement wall has already been implemented and is now in situ. Members are reminded that the decision-making process remains the same and the application is judged on its own merits and what's presented in the application for you. So this is the location plan for the old post office, which is our application site. As you will see, it's bounded by a red line which indicates the planning site in question. The wall sits along the front elevation and is approximately just here in an L shape at the front. The dwelling itself is one of 3 within a cluster along the side of Berry Road in Flempton. On this slide I've included a screenshot of our GIS mapping system on the left and then a Google satellite imagery on the right to provide a little bit of context of what the area looks like and some of the planning constraints of the site. As we'll see on the GIS image, the old post office and batch end are both highlighted in pink, and this indicates that they are listed buildings. In this case, the old post office is grade 2 listed. In addition, you will see a red dotted line, which indicates the Flempton conservation area, so it just runs along here and then down Berry Road, with which the dwelling sits within. There is also a public right-of-way track here, which is illustrated by the pink dotted line through the field here. As you can see from the satellite image, Thatch End, the old post office and the Meads all sit quite prominently along Berry Road, which runs throughout the village. So this was a sketch of the dimensions of the wall which was submitted within the application. So as you can see, the wall is approximately 7.5 metres long in this front section, with a 1.1 metre gap in the middle, which leads to the front door, and then it curves around by 2.1 metres and then again by 3.3. As mentioned in the report in paragraph 1, the wall measures between 0.87 and 0.99 metres in height, so just shy of 1 metre. But this will be illustrated much better within the photographs. As I mentioned, it is retrospective. So on this slide, this just provides a little bit of context as to what existed prior to the replacement wall being implemented. So this was the wall that was replaced. It is to be noted that the conservation officers highlighted within their comments that this particular wall was not particularly appropriate and was unsuitable in the area. But just to provide a little bit of context as to what was before, and I'll show you what is there now. So this is the photo that was submitted of the replacement wall in question. As you can see, it comprises of red brick with grey cement, and then the top of the wall includes half-round copings on the top there. As mentioned in the previous slides, you can see that the height of the wall is just shy of 1 metre and includes a break with the gate which leads to the front door of the dwelling here. So for the next couple of slides, these just show some different photos and some details and some videos of the wall, just to provide a different perspective. So in this photo, this shows the wall against the pavement here, and you can just about see where the second wall break in the wall would have sat, which led to the original post office. In addition, you can see the height difference against the adjoining wall at Thatch End, and then also the difference in width between these 2 walls, as well as the difference in materials. As you can see, the adjacent wall includes some canted brick with a triangular coping, as opposed to the rounded top of the old post office. So this is the view looking from the other side of the road. Apologies, it's obviously quite sunny this day, so there's a few shadows, but hopefully the point still stands. As you can see the difference in height here, so you can see that the old post office wall sits lower than the adjoining wall, and also the difference in the materials between the 2 walls. So in this photo, this is looking towards Flempton Church, so going into Flempton, which is St Catherine's Church, which you might be able to see clearly in the following video. However, within this photo, you can see, although in shadow, the wall opposite bounds Flempton House, And this wall just here includes gold brick in a furnished bond, which is a traditional brick pattern. And this means that in terms of the bricks, the stretchers and the headers are laid alternatively to create a distinct and aesthetic pattern. So just to show the wall opposite to the wall which has been installed. I'll just play this video. So this is the first video taken on the site. So as I mentioned, you can see St Catherine's Church in the background. Then we're just panning around. There's the old post office, and then the Thatch End. The Meads, and then leading up to the road coming out of Flempton. So then this video is then going towards the church, so we're panning around, so there's the old post office, there's that flint wall of Thatch End, and then this wall continues all the way up to the church at the end. And then we've just finished with the wall of Flempton House opposite as well, so just to give you a bit more of the character of the area. And then finally, we're just further down Berry Road, just before the church, and then, apologies. So now we are just further down Berry Road, just before the church, so the video will just pan around to look towards where the old post office sits higher up. So there's Flempton House panning around, and then you can just see the gable end of Thatch End there. So this slide shows a summary of the comments and representations that were received during the course of the application. As you can see, Flempton Parish Council are in support of the replacement wall. Councillor Gossip, who's here today as a board member, attended delegation panel back in April and is also speaking. From the site notice and neighbour letters, no comments have been received. Suffolk County Council Highways have raised no concerns. And finally, as the dwelling is grade 2 listed and sits within the conservation area, our conservation has made comments which I will summarise on the next slide. Oh, sorry. Apologies that this slide is a little bit word heavy, but I've copied the full comments from the conservation officer and highlighted the main points in yellow. You will also be able to read the comments in full within paragraph 7 of the report if that's a bit easier. The main points of the conservation officer's objection are that the adjoining wall is constructed by flint with pale green or gold brick points and triangular tops. In addition, gold brick is used along the boundary wall to Flempton House, in comparison to the replacement wall which has been implemented. Red brick in this round with grey cement and half-round copings are not prevalent in this part of the conservation area, nor do they form the boundaries of listed buildings as shown at Thatch End or Flempton House. As a council, decision makers are required to have special regards to preserving or enhancing the character or appearance of the setting of listed buildings and conservation areas. In this case of this application, the wall is not built of materials or in a design which is typical of the area and therefore fails to comply with these requirements. In addition, as a private wall, there are no public benefits to outweigh the harm caused, and it does not enhance or better reveal the significance of the listed building. This is further expanded on within paragraph 29 and 30 of the report as well. So just as an additional point, as well as the wall, some side gates have also been installed at the property. These have not been included on the application. However, as you can see from the conservation officer, she has determined they are traditional in design and have the same character as those at Flempton House. They are therefore considered to be acceptable in this case. And then just to summarise, just to remind everyone, the application is retrospective and therefore this wall is already in situ without the benefit of planning permission. The site itself is located within a conservation area and the dwelling is grade 2 listed. This means the main policies the application has been assessed against are policy DM15 and DM17. The conservation officer has objected to the replacement wall and confirmed that the wall is not characteristic of the surrounding area and therefore fails to accord with the criteria listed on the slide. These criteria include the wall not being of an appropriate design, inappropriate materials used in its construction, and it is not in keeping or respectful to the listed building or wider conservation area. It's for these reasons that the application cannot be supported by officers and is therefore recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay. private speakers, we have supporter David Bambury. Welcome, David. We have the chairman of the parish council, Councillor Andrew Speed. We've got Susan Glossop, who is the ward representative who's registered to speak. And we've got Charlotte Partridge, who is the applicant. Okay. So in that order, David, you're on first.
I thought Susan was on first, actually.
No. Always follow the guidance of the chair. It's you first, David, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. I'm here to speak as a private individual, not a parish councillor. I want to support the view that a compromise would be a reasonable solution to this planning application. And first I'd like to say that Susan Glossop works very hard for her parishes and is often unfairly criticised, as it is her responsibility to report complaints made to her, and sensibly she keeps those residents involved. I know that Susan has had a lot of personal criticism over several planning applications in Flempton over the years, and it's most undeserved. I have been involved in a few planning applications in the parish. The contentious ones always cause problems. There is always someone who is left aggrieved and feeling they were unjustly treated at the end of the process. And although the planning department moves on, the social fallout remains. Planning applications, particularly retrospective ones, spread discord amongst residents. This can carry on for a long time after the application is settled. I can only speak as an observer here, but I've found in the past it difficult to understand the logic of the planning and conservation departments. To me, there often appears to be inconsistencies in decision making and the approach of individual officers. Hence, I think there has developed a huge variation in attitude amongst residents of Flempton and Hengrove towards the regulations that apply to living in a conservation area. And I think this is what leads to these retrospective planning applications. People are really just not sure what they should be doing. To go to the wall, along the A1101, fronting the properties between Hengrove and Flempton, there are a variety of fences, hedges and walls. Some are in a better state of repair than others, but there are a wide variety of styles. This wall is one of the better ones along the roads, and it would seem to me that tearing it down would be an extremely wasteful thing to do. Surely a compromise would be the best solution, one that may have been reached without recourse to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, David. And my comments about always following the guidance of the chair, I suspect there are some members thinking, no, we don't. Or no, we wouldn't. Okay, so now we've got Councillor Speed. You are speaking as the chairman of the parish council. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. I support many of David's comments. I think that, importantly, the wall that stands there now replaced a previous wall of similar material that, again, would not have met conservation guidelines. So a conservation wall wasn't removed and replaced. It was, in fact, a newer wall to replace one that was, in fact, quite old and actually unsafe in some areas. The family were quite keen to naturally have a safe wall in front of a very busy road. I think it is a shame that it's taken 4 years to get to a positive resolution on this. I think there are things to think about more broadly about how we consult with conservation, how we arrive at decisions, and I absolutely agree that possibly a compromise is needed on this application. One of the conservation comments is factually not quite correct. There are red brick walls in the vicinity, in the rear of Flempton House, and there are rounded copings on one of those walls. So that's perhaps significant, that statement's factually not accurate. The parish council were happy to support, partly because I think they agreed that to tear down a perfectly good wall would just be a waste of everybody's time and money, and secondly to have some sympathy with a young family who were trying to just improve and preserve their property with a safe wall as a barrier for their young family between the road. My summary would simply be that this is a small matter. There is the option, I think, to change the coping so that it matches the neighbouring wall, and I think the applicants would be in agreement with that, and that sort of sensible compromise perhaps should have been reached earlier, but I would certainly support that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Glossop, please, as a ward member.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make it quite clear, I'm talking as a ward member now. I will not be taking part in the debate and I will not be voting on this application. Right, so retrospective planning applications like this one in the curtilage of a listed building or conservation area does cause problems, as you have heard from Mr. Banbury, because this is the third one now in the last few years. It puts members of the residents unhappy, the applicant unhappy, and it gives a lot of work to our officers. And if we could get over this business of retrospective planning applications, it would make everybody's life much happier, and especially the applicants. Because this has been going on for 4 years now. Admittedly, we had COVID, so therefore that had an impact on the work. As you've heard, we have a red brick wall now. The height, width and coping stones are not built in line with the wall that was taken down. The wall that was taken down was in a different line. This one now doesn't butt up well with thatch end, who have the original wall. So that is a problem. The old wall that was taken down had been there for, to my knowledge, at least 70 years, if probably more. So, and I walk past this wall every day, so I probably know it better than anyone. All the houses in Berry Road, they're all thatched and they're all listed. There are 7 of them, and they were sold from the Hengrove Estates in 1952. I'm actually at a loss, and I've tried to look at old photographs and whatever, as to why Thatch End has still got the old original wall, and yet the post office hasn't, unless it got taken down when it became a post office. I don't know. I've got photographs here of the old post office. It was the place that people came to look at, and we had Mitre birds sat outside and an old English sheepdog. But that's by the by. The conservation officer is asking that the new red brick wall is replaced with a wall that would match what the original wall would have been, the original wall. But I would like to make a suggestion. Rachel may say I cannot do this, but because we're supposed to be looking at the application we have in front of us. But I'm not sure yet what this committee will decide, whether they think the wall should be approved or whether the preservation of the heritage should be protected. But I would like to suggest that the conservation officer works with the applicants and they try to sort out the coping and the wall between Thatch End and the old post office, because at the moment that's built as it steps down. And I think if we had a few minor alterations, perhaps we could come to a sensible conclusion to this, this situation. Again, I am going to reiterate though, because I put in the parish magazine all the time, reminding people that they do need to have pre-planning application or talk before they do things.
I'm very sorry to interrupt.
Okay, thank you.
Have you got one more sentence, or is that?
Well, you did cut that right. Sorry.
And I'm sure I shall live to regret it.
So I think, yes, it's very sad, and had the applicant talked to the conservation officer, we wouldn't be in this situation where we've got so many people unhappy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so we turn our attention to the applicant, Charlotte Partridge. Charlotte, it's your 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, please bear with me, this is all totally alien to me. We built the wall in good faith, though we realised we were completely naive at the time. We are just a young family trying to improve our home and to make it safe, as the old wall was falling down onto a public pavement and onto the road. Our intentions were only good. As there was already a red brick wall there previously, with modern industrial red bricks with concrete copings, we thought replacing the wall with a red brick again would be okay. Using more sympathetic materials such as heritage bricks and handmade putty coping stones. There are plenty of other walls, red brick walls used in Flempton, which frustratingly hasn't been shown. And we did put this in our application as proof, and I hope this helps to keep some of the red bricks. Our concerns, if we are made to pull this wall down, are we simply don't have the funds to rebuild the wall. The wall cost us around £5,000, and we took out a loan to fund this. But most importantly, above all money and all of that, the wall protects our 3 young children from a very busy road, which quite often is speeding. The wall is the only thing that prevents our children from running onto the road from our front door. This would be so dangerous without one. Again, if there is no wall, it will look like an eyesore, and considering all our neighbours and villages have only expressed that this wall is such an improvement to what was there before, and also the parish council have supported our wall and application, it seems to me that the people it affects directly all seem to be positive about the wall. If we can't keep the wall as it is, maybe we could change the coping stones to something that is more within keeping. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. And very clear, very concise, and very well. So thank you very much. Right, members, we're now on the committee debate and discussion. And the first one I've got is Councillor Dicker, who was just slightly ahead of you, Councillor Neil. And I picked up Councillor Bull.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did wonder why actually this wasn't a site visit. Being in the conservation area, this building, everything else for us to see. However, so I had no idea, I just read the report until I seen the pictures. And I wrote on my pad really straight away, shocking. And I'm afraid for a listed building and an area, it is shocking. Now I've listened to obviously the applicant and everything, and I fully understand what they're saying. However, we do have to protect our areas, and I wouldn't want to see a wall pulled down. So there must be some way that the conservation officer can get with the applicant and sort out what could be acceptable changes to it that would be okay for everyone. And then maybe it would come back to us and hopefully we would agree with that. But as it stands, however harsh it might be, if there's no changes to be done to it, I will fully support it coming down, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just check? I've got Councillor Neil, Chester, Bull, Mildmay, White, Miller Jones. Oh, and this is your hands, Witham, and London, and Thorndyke. Okay. I just was anxious I didn't miss anybody. Right, so next in line is Councillor Neil, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got every sympathy with the applicant. They've gone about it with good intentions and their personal circumstances have been highlighted. But there is a process, and the process hasn't been adhered to, I'm afraid. It's a listed building. There's people who build flint walls, and the situation could have been so different. It's not in keeping, and it has an impact on the character and the neighbourhood, I'm afraid. So I have to say I support the recommendation to refuse the application, and the wall's going to come down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Are you making actually a proposal for refusal or just commenting at this point? Okay, thank you. Councillor Chester.
Thank you, Chair. In answer to the first speaker's question, being pragmatic is a new gift to this committee under the guidance of officers. That being said, this is a retrospective planning, and the message is here, ignorance is always no excuse. We have a conservation area in a listed building. That being said, did I correctly hear from the case officer that the last time the correct wall was in situ was 80 years ago?
Well, that'd be a question that we'll
Okay, so that's what I was asking. Should that be the case? That would mean we've had some sort of red wall or something different in situ for a long period of time, which has gone unchecked and uncriticised. So my perspective is out on this, but I would like a question answered, please, on the duration of the existing type of wall and we've been there. Thank you, Chair.
No, that's fine. Tomorrow we'll come back on that to when we've got more questions. Councillor Bull, please.
I understand entirely the need to protect listed buildings and But if, as the case, and we're going to have here how long that wall's been in existence, if that old red brick wall has been there 70 years, that has become part and parcel of the neighbourhood. And I have to say, I think that must have some bearing on this. When I first read the papers, I thought, oh no, you can't possibly change it. I'd envisaged the brick and flint walls as 6 foot brick and flint, well, I hadn't read that. But when I saw the pictures, and having seen what's been there for, we're going to say, the last 70 years, I'm thinking, I can't see that isn't an improved red brick wall, and I think I would, if, as they say, the coping is the problem, then maybe we could do something, but to knock it down, and if the applicant can't afford to replace it, so nothing replaces it, that's going to be even more detrimental to the building to have nothing there. So I find this, I wish we could find some compromise there.
Yeah, okay. Rachel's just asking if you can make a point on that now rather than if it's a concern for more than one member. Thank you. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So I think we've heard from a couple of people about the question of the wall that, I like the way you put it, Councillor Gossett, the original wall, and when that might have been lost. From a planning officer's point of view, we don't exactly know when the original wall was taken down and replaced with the wall that Tamara had on the photograph. You might want to put that up actually tomorrow. But you're saying that other wall was probably there about, the intermediate wall was probably there about 70 years. The new wall, the wall that is there now, we understand was built in about 2019, and then we've had involvement from enforcement, and we've now got this planning application. I think the important thing for members to concentrate on as a planning committee is not really what was there in between the original and what we've got now. It's looking at the wall that is there now and deciding whether that is appropriate to the setting of the listed building and the setting of the conservation area. So whilst the history of what's happened to the walls at the front is somewhat relevant, if this hadn't been built and we were looking at a plan of this is what they want to build now, the judgment wouldn't be whether it's better than what was there previously. The judgment is quite a simple one of whether it's acceptable in terms of the setting of the listed building in the conservation area. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And just to reassure members, I've got next Councillor Marmaduke White, then Miller Jones, then Whittam, then London, and then Thorndyke, and now Hood. I haven't missed anybody on that list, Right, Councillor Marmaduke White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'm sorry that this situation has arisen, but anyone who buys a listed building, lives in a conservation area, must be aware that they cannot just make changes as and when they wish. They have to have a suitable consultation with the conservation officer and plans approved. So, ignorance is no defence in law. Somebody must have known what they bought and how things have to be treated in a conservation area and in front of a listed building like this. It is unattractive, there's no doubt about it. But there must be ways of coming up with a compromise. I don't know if this committee can do that as we sit here. In an ideal world, it should come down and something more appropriate, brick and flint or whatever, should be put up. But if that's really not going to be possible, then I think we must come to some sort of compromise. There must be a way that you could encourage lichen to grow on the brick, and if the coping, if it were raised a little bit to be in keeping with the height of the neighbouring wall, and you could change the coping stones. Is that something we should be considering as a committee? Is it something we can be considering as a committee? Failing that, then I'm sorry to say that I'm in agreement with the officers and it would have to come down and be replaced with something more appropriate. But there was a picture further down of some really unattractive fencing. Could we just go to see that tomorrow? And I know that's no offence because, I mean, the wall doesn't even meet the other one, does it? So there's a huge problem with it. But if we could come up with a compromise. There's, yes, further down. Yeah, I mean, what's that fencing? The property isn't listed, but it's still within the conservation area, isn't it? I mean, you know, we travel this road quite often, so there is a hodgepodge of fencing up there. So that's my position. If a compromise could be reached, I'd go for that. If not, then I'm afraid the wall will have to be removed and replaced.
Thank you, Councillor Member White. Again, Rachel, would just like to interject at this point. To you, Rachel.
Yeah, it's just a factual point, really. That fence doesn't need planning permission because that building isn't listed. So it might look like, well, someone's got something that's not acceptable next door, but that fence wouldn't actually require planning permission, whereas a wall or a fence around the curtilage of a listed building does. So that's the sort of regulatory difference between the two of those things.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Miller-Jones, please.
Yeah, so I had wanted to say something about, can you hear me? Yeah? Something about the fact that the red brick wall was there for so long, and I understand the point that that's not really the issue, but I feel it's an issue in the sense that residents are used to seeing a red brick wall there. It might not be perfect, but it's a huge, massive improvement over what was there before. And the way I would look at it, if we're talking about do we want to approve this planning application, if there was only one choice and it was either keep the previous wall or have this wall is so much better. So I would have approved the application if the only option was to either keep the old rubbish one or have this new one. I think we should listen to the parish council and the residents. No one's complaining. The parish council supports it. They're the people who live there, and they're who I would listen to.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. I keep wanting to say Councillor Melvin White because you both start there. Councillor Whitton, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I agree. There is a need to look after heritage, listed buildings and conservation areas. I hate to say, but the new wall does stick out a bit like a sore thumb. Having said that, so did the original wall that it replaced, which had been there in place for some 70 odd years or so, as we've been told. I could suggest a possible compromise. Change the coping stones and raise the height of the new wall to match the adjoining wall of the adjoining property on its left-hand side facing, and perhaps render and paint to match the house, which then would be a colour that would blend in nicely with the rest of the situation, and that would save the waste and the time and money of knocking down a wall that was in excess of £5,000 to build in the first place, which I would agree with my colleague down there, was an infinite improvement on what was there already. Yes, I recognise that if you own a listed building or live in a conservation area, then you should be aware of the requirements and responsibilities of living in those areas. However, it seems to me that these people tried to do their very best and replace a grotty red brick wall with a very nice looking red brick wall, which is now safe. It's been stated that the local council and parish have no objections, and that there are no objections from people in the village. Furthermore, I doubt anybody would take any notice of it when driving through. They would be just rushing into Bury St Edmunds and would not differentiate that wall between any others in the area. So So perhaps there could be a compromise, but I think really any great alteration would be a waste of time and money at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittle. Councillor London, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I have a question, which is whether procedurally whether we are allowed to suggest a compromise or not. Several of us have suggested such, and it would be nice to get clarity as to whether that is an option. Secondly, I'd just like to reiterate what some of my colleagues have said here, which is that the wall is a significant improvement over the old wall, if not the old wall. I'd like to, I understand that not understanding the law is not an excuse. However, I wonder if these sorts of situations keep coming up, whether it might be best for us to have a look at our own processes by which applicants can understand what their rights and responsibilities are, and whether those processes are fit for purpose. And the other point that I haven't heard raised is there is, albeit a small one, an environmental aspect to this. There is a perfectly serviceable wall there now. In knocking it down, in pouring more concrete, it is only a small matter, but there will be an environmental cost to that. And then finally, I'd also like to reiterate the comments of other councillors that the parish council, as a body that is the voice of the local community, has no objection to this wall as it currently stands, and as a member of my own local parish council, I am minded to take that into consideration.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Thorndyke, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I go past this wall every time I go to my old door, and yes, it's noticeable, but the lady says it wasn't very good faith. I have no reason not to believe her. How many times have we heard at this committee over the years from people who have done alterations to their houses that they were not aware? And I think there is the real problem. Basically, people shuffle houses, they're not aware of some of the rules and regulations. So we have a problem here. Somebody's built a wall that doesn't fit, shouldn't be there, great point. We're now talking about telling them to tear it down. I think that is totally unacceptable. I think back to a house just outside Ixworth, actually in Pakenham, where the gentleman who put the wrong windows in. The windows he'd taken out and been for there for God knows how long, you know the place I'm on about, and he put some new ones in, and the house changed hands, and the new owner was faced with having to change the windows, all windows in the house, and great expense because those there were the Willows or Beaches, I can't remember which it is now, the Willows I think. And we came up with a compromise whereby he could keep the windows he'd got. I think Councillor Smith would bear this out, don't I? But when he came to change the windows, he would have to go back to what should have been there. And I just wonder whether we can come up with some compromise like that with this. The wall stays, but when it needs replacing, it goes back to what was the original, not the 70-year one, but the one before that. And I think there is a process that we can use to do that. I'm not sure, because it was a while ago we did one in Ixworth, Pakenham, whatever. But it worked well there, and you go past the place regularly, you know the windows are now the right windows, isn't it?
Yes, I
think it's a word.
Yeah. I think there may be a way of dealing with it, but just I've got Councillor Hook next, then Dickory and Mother Jones again. Is there anybody else? Because Rachel wants to come and give us the benefit of her guidance before we move on, so that's fine. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I've got my microphone. So yeah, there's been a bit of a procedural question about whether, is a compromise possible. For compromise, we'd have to equate that to a deferral to seek views from the Conservation Officer as to whether there is anything that can be done to the wall to make it more acceptable. So yes, that is possible. It could be deferred to seek further information from our conservation officer and to allow time for any negotiations to take place between our conservation officer and the applicants. That is possible. I just think that there's been a few comments about, well, nobody in the community has got a problem with it and the parish support it. But I think it's really important that the committee remembers, and obviously what the local area thinks is important, but I just want to remind the committee that in relation to listed buildings and conservation areas, we do have a duty to consider not harming or affecting the setting of listed buildings and the character and appearance of conservation areas. So that's a duty enshrined in planning law that I just want to remind members they have that duty when coming to a view on this proposal. I think the other thing I wanted to mention is this application, this recommendation is not a recommendation to have the wall torn down. The recommendation is to refuse the application that's before us. In actual fact, although enforcement is not part of what we're determining today, we have actually already issued an enforcement notice for this wall to be demolished, and that hasn't been appealed. We've got this retrospective application instead, but I think it's important that members are aware the decision is about the merits of the planning application as opposed to whether the wall is demolished or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Wood.
Thank you. I found myself for the second time today agreeing with Roger Dicker, which is a positive step. Of course, one's sympathetic to the applicant here, and again, the officer report is very clear to me. We have to be consistent. This is a listed building. I think we all know that when you own a listed building, you can't just do anything. You have to seek planning permission, and that's what we all have to do. Conservation areas are, I think, very important. They need to be protected. We've all seen a lot of conservation areas which have been vandalised, and I actually am very pleased that West Suffolk Council planning officers are supporting the protection of the conservation area in this case. That having been said, it's just been explained that there is an enforcement order out there, and it would seem to be probably the best thing to do at this stage to see if some kind of compromise could be reached, and so I would be very supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Dicker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we're being asked here, members, is to look at this application and basically a yes or a no. We've talked about compromises. Yes, we'd all like to see one, but fundamentally, it's either agree with the planning officer or not. I'm very happy to, if you bear with me, Mr. Chairman, proposedly agree with the recommendation here. However, because what would happen, obviously, yes, there'd be a no for what's in front of us here, but conversations with the conservation officer would continue. As we know, we're not the greatest all-local authority at carrying out enforcement and actually seeing anything through. So there's no doubt if the thing's been there for 3 years already, or 4 years already, we ain't talking about the lorry coming on and knocking it down tomorrow. It ain't going to happen. So there's plenty of time for conversations to be had to see if a compromise, but fundamentally we're here to determine what's in front of us, to say yes or no. Now I'm quite interested with the deferment side. I was actually, once I'd spoken initially, thinking of that, and when other members had said about the compromises. So if that would help here, my initial thought was yes to agree with the plan, with the conservation officer, accept the recommendation. However, I'm quite happy to propose a deferral for more conversations to go on and then see what comes out of that. So I'm happy to propose that, and yeah, see if someone else would agree with me on that?
I suspect there's going to be a few. Can I just go, Councillor Hood, I think, just beat everybody with their hand up. So.
Can I stand what's on your list before, I think?
Yes, but I'm asking for a second.
I'm happy to second.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. You were on my list with Councillor Jones. Councillor Glossop has a bit of a complex about me anyway, because she thinks I ignore it. I don't. Okay, so Councillor Dicker's recommending deferral. I guess that's then going to be linked to a recommendation from the committee that the applicants and the Conservation and Planning Officer discuss whether there's a reasonable compromise that can be achieved. And that's about changing the coping, so far I've heard, changing coping stones, raising the height, possibly rendering and painting, but that's not for us to determine. Okay? Rachel would now like to correct the chairman. Sorry.
Chair, I don't want to correct you, but if you look at the detailed comments of the conservation officer, one of the other concerns is about the mortar. So I'd be, if members are comfortable with that, it'd be good to have that included in the discussions. Thank you.
Okay, made that note as well. And Councillor Jones, you'd be pleased to hear that I've reached you now.
Thank you very much. So I don't think that actually the rules about listed buildings necessarily are that clear. If I think Rachel said that it says something about not harming or affecting, I can't remember the exact wording. This wall proposed as a replacement for the wall that was already there, that is not harming anything, it's improving it. So in that respect, I can completely understand why the applicants would have thought it was no problem at all, because it's not harming anything, it's an improvement. The environmental aspect was one that I had meant to raise myself. It's a cost to the applicants, which they can't afford, it's also a cost to the environment. I would actually like to propose accepting the application as it is. I think with the improvements, that's going to cost money that they may not have, that's going to have environmental costs, and will the improvements really improve it? I mean, it's very different, but it's actually nice. If you look at it outside the context of where it is, the wall's already fine. I'm not sure that changing it a bit is actually going to make that much difference, and I think we should accept the application, so I propose to accept it as it is.
Okay. Yes, there's already a proposal on the table to be fair, so unless that fails, we can't take this up. Be good to challenge us. Thank you very much indeed. Next, I've got Councillor Thorndyke.
No, I've got nothing further to add. We've got it on the table for deferral. I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. In that case, Councillor Chester.
I thought we forgot me as well.
It's only Councillor Glossop.
Okay, I would have been happy to propose a second deferment on this for further consultation with Conservation Officer based on the fact the original asset was lost 80 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hyde, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak, but there's something that was said that confused me, and ordinarily I hate retrospective planning applications, and I always think, because they often come with people who knew what they were doing, they wanted to put it up and get permission afterwards. This doesn't apply in this case. This is a wall replacing, not exactly like for like, but it replaced one red brick wall with another. This is substantially better than what was there before, and the applicant's done it in good faith. No one thinks it sticks out like a sore thumb, I certainly don't. And it was replacing something that had been there for many, many years. So it was obvious that the applicant would think that they were just replacing like for like, and it would be perfectly okay. But the question that I had, and the thing that horrifies me, was I think that Rachel said that there was an enforcement order. Are we saying that even if we came to a decision to keep this wall, that the enforcement order would have priority over the approval, and that the person could still be made to take it down? Is the enforcement order, does that have more clout than approving or not approving this, please. Can you ask that? But I'd actually be in favour of keeping what's there. What has been put up, and I would actually second, if it were to come up without the other one, I would actually second what Councillor Miller Jones said. But can you clarify that, please? Does the enforcement order have priority?
We will definitely do that. But I've just got Councillor Holder, then Councillor London, and then we'll go back to officers. Councillor Holder, please.
Yeah, thank you. Sort of wind the clock back a bit on this one, because we get these all the time. In 20 years I've been sitting on development control. Every time a listed building application comes up in a conservation area, we have a lot of trouble, because it could be windows, it could be doors, it could be fences, walls, features, and quite a lot of it is being done by ignorance, as we've heard today. And we did quite a big exercise on Article 4 areas in various areas and elsewhere. But I still don't think the information gets to the house owner or householder. We subscribe to a company called ARP in Thetford that does the business rates and the council tax. They know when a property changes hands. With advice from ourselves, we could tell them, and they could flag it up in their computer. We have IT systems. Whose house is in Article 4 direction, whose house is listed. And that person to get a leaflet with their council tax explaining those things, where they can then link into council websites and find out what they've got to do. And it might actually, one, say, well, you did know because we told you on your rates bill, and two, your solicitor should have passed well told you. Anyway, go back to him and say, why didn't you tell me about all this stuff? So really, the ignorance thing should really be put to bed. I also learned that in fairness to our council officers, they have policies to follow and all the rest of it. However, I sometimes think the interpretation takes on a bit of a personal spin, where they can actually say, well, I do want this building touched in any shape or form, so I have got policies that can stop anybody doing things to them. And I think that is used a bit of a sledgehammer sometimes to crack a nut. And we've heard the to and fro of the debate today, where there's a lot of sympathy, the red wall's fine, what's the problem? Nobody's objecting except us, or rather the West Suffolk District Council Planning Department. So I, as a member of this committee, get rather fed up of being torn like this all the time, where my natural bent is to actually go with the applicant. But we're told time and time again by officers, well, actually, this is our policy, you must not go against the policy. And I'm thinking, oh God, you know, what do I do? We've heard about compromise, we've heard about deferment, and we're going to be told if the enforcement notice takes precedence over everything. So I wait to hear about that. I'm not making a recommendation. Obviously, the chair will put it to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holder. It's a classic dilemma for anyone that sits on this committee that you just outlined, so thank you for that. I've got two, Councillor London, I've got to go to you, and then Councillor Bull. And then I want to go back to officers, because I think there are some critical things that need clarifying here. Councillor London.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ensure that if a list of recommendations from this body is being sent forwards to the Conservation Officer, you mentioned some of them, that all of them are mentioned. There was, I can't remember who it was that mentioned a lichen spray, that's a possibility. And I'd also very much like to know whether, I think it was Councillor Thorndyke's idea of the wall somehow having a condition on it that it's allowed to stay, but the next time it needs to be repaired, that there is a much stronger condition that it be repaired to the original wall. Those weren't mentioned in that list, and I think they should be added to that list. And I just wanted to make sure that was good.
Absolutely. My list was just mine. I can't be brevity, can I? Who was it? Anyway, it's for brevity reasons. The point taken. Councillor Bull, please, and then I'd like to go back to officers.
Just a very quick one. Do we know when the building was listed?
The only reason is, was that wall there, the red brick wall there, when it was listed, surely that is quite a critical fact. Because I know a building where it had critical installed in it, critical windows.
Critical windows, yes.
But it was listed, it was a grade 2, it was listed after critical windows were installed, and they had to be retained.
Good point. Right, no other members on my list. Have I missed anybody? Councillor Miller-Jones.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I understand a lot of the other councillors saying that they're sympathetic, and then they go on to talk about, preserving the character of the area. That doesn't feel that sympathetic to me when we're talking about a family who can't replace the wall, the safety of a young family. I almost feel like that sympathy needs to extend to putting their needs above whether you like the look of the wall or not.
Yes, okay, thank you, Councillor. That point has been... Councillor Whittam?
Thank you very much, Chair. I think that's absolutely critical in this case, is when the building was listed. If the red brick wall that was replaced with a red brick wall was in situ when it was listed, that is of absolute paramount in this case. Rightly mentioned was those horrible metal galvanised critical windows that to this day blight a lot of our listed buildings. If it's good enough for them, it's surely good enough for this wall. So,
okay. Thank you, Councillor Whittam. The critical window issue is slightly off piece, isn't it, in the context of this application? To be fair, I remember as a youngster living in a bedroom with a very nice frosty interior, on the windows, fan shades. Right, getting back to this application, I'm now complete on my list, save for any questions that come up after Rachel and Charles have responded. So over to you guys.
Thank you, Chair. I remember living in an unlisted building with ice on the inside of the window when I was a student. Yeah. So I think let's start with the question that Councillor Hind asked about the extant enforcement notice. So we do have an enforcement notice that is extant, requiring the demolition of the wall that we're currently considering. What we wouldn't do, depending on what happens with this application, we basically have the power to hold that enforcement notice in abeyance until we need to take any action regarding it. It would be totally unreasonable for us to start trying to take action in relation to that enforcement notice while we have an application that we're considering, or indeed whilst there might be then further discussions between the applicant and the conservation officer in relation to the wall. So you can rest assured that it doesn't have that primacy that means whatever we're talking about here is irrelevant. We would not take any action while these discussions were going on. I'll then jump to the question that Councillor London asked about the suggestion that Councillor Thorndike had made. I think that would be very difficult in these circumstances to go along with something like that, because we are currently dealing with an application for the wall, and in this case we also have an extant enforcement notice. So I don't think that is an avenue that we could go down, but if members do decide to defer this application, that's something that we can give further thought to when we bring the application back to committee. The building was listed in 1983, so that the middle wall, the intermediate wall, was present when the building was listed. I don't think there's anything more to say on that really. Basically, as I said, well, I've got one more thing to say. As I said earlier, what we're dealing with is not whether this wall is better than the previous wall. What we're dealing with is whether this wall is acceptable to the setting of the listed building and the setting of the conservation area. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. And a wholesome apology to Tamara, who I referred to as Charles apparently. It's an age thing. Councillor London and Councillor Hine, please.
A very brief question for our officers, which is, as the intermediate wall was in position when the property was listed, if the owners of the property had taken the view that that wall was broken and needed repair, and repaired it exactly as it was at the point that the building was listed with the intermediate horrible wall, would that have been acceptable?
I think officers will respond about the relevancy or lack of it in this particular debate, but thank you for raising the point. Councillor Hine, please.
Thank you very much. Having established that when this house was listed, it already had a red brick wall which had to be replaced, can I propose that we accept the application as it's been made and approve the wall that has been replaced and is safe and is not causing anybody any harm, please? Thank you.
Councillor Hine, very much in the same way I responded to Councillor Jones, we have a deferral as a proposal and we have to vote on that first. If that then fails, members can quite rightly propose alternatives, but we can't do what yourself, and despite how you feel about it, I understand. And I'd be grateful if you just pop your mic off as well. Thank you very much indeed. Just in case you're grumbling about the chair. Can I just clarify, I read out what I believe to be some recommendations that would lead to the discussion between the applicant. Is that appropriate, or is it just an open discussion between the conservation officer and the applicant?
There might be other things that the conservation officer has in her head that we've not thought of.
But those things
those things are all relevant and helpful, I think.
Okay.
They might not be inclusive.
Thank you. Because I didn't, there were two things you mentioned. You mentioned lichen spray and there was something else. Is it the colour of the water? No, don't worry about it, that's fine. Councillor Chester then, and after Councillor Chester, thank you.
Just a point of order here, please. In the light of new evidence, the fact that wall's listed with the house, a red brick wall, should we refuse to, should deferral fail, can we then vote, as Councillor Hine suggested, on this application?
You can certainly vote on an application to approve.
That's if deferral fails. We're voting on it first.
Fails, yes.
Thank you.
Right, I'm going to move swiftly on. Oh yes. Okay, there's just a conversation going on. Thank you. Councillor, sorry about the delay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Another procedural question. So I just want to clarify exactly the order that we are looking at this. So there is a motion to defer. If that fails, there will probably be a motion to retain the wall. And if during that second motion a decision is made to reject the application, I'm assuming that is the end of the process. We can't then go back to deferral.
No, because there would have to be another motion to refuse it in line with the officer's recommendation. So I don't, to be fair, judging the mood of people on the committee, I don't think deferral will fail. I can't judge it, but I don't think it would fail. So, but Rachel would just like to clarify again some points. Thank you. No. Yeah, sorry. Officers, just
like to further correct. No, it's not correct. Just to clarify, if a motion fails, so if the proposal is to approve and it fails, it doesn't mean it's a refusal. There has to be a separate motion for refusal. Okay, just thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple more points to make. I think we need to, just going back to some of the comments that Councillor Miller-Jones made, and I am, forgive me, but I am paraphrasing, but I think it's important that members understand what's material and what isn't in relation to those comments. Councillor Miller-Jones talked about the sympathy for the applicant, and that the sympathy related to the fact that if the wall's got to be demolished and rebuilt, that will have also financial costs for the applicant. I have to advise the committee that that is not a material consideration on which we can base a reasonable and valid planning decision. We have to consider the material considerations, top of which in this case relates to the setting of the listed building in the conservation area. So it's just to be clear about that comment. And then, Chair, if I may, there was one last point. So, because we started getting into a discussion about the order of what happens if a deferral motion fails. If there was then a motion to approve this application, I would be advising the committee that I would be invoking the decision-making protocol, and that would need to come back for a risk assessment. We've had lots of questions about the status of the wall at the time of listing, and questions about whether there could be any other compromises, and I think we would need to invoke that protocol so that a risk assessment came back to committee on the minded to recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. As it stands, we've got a substantive proposal for deferral, and that's proposed by Councillor Dick and seconded by Councillor Hood. And the recommendation of the committee is that the applicants and the planning and conservation officer try and reach a compromise if they can. So, can I see a show of hands in favour of deferring, please? Those against deferral, please. Yes, it's not voted.
So the votes are 13 in favour, 2 against, and 1 abstention. So it is. So the application is recommended for a deferral, and we'll come back with.
Thank you.
Those points that were read out by the chair. Sorry, I think I lost it. Apologies.
Thank you very much indeed.